Alright, so in this video I'm going to show you how to do the Lesson 3 for Day 1 warm-up. Now again, if you have not tried these on your own, I request that you do that first because it's important that you give these a shot. See if you can remember what you learned from the video from the day before. And this would be then to boost that confidence and make sure that either A, you know how to at least get them started, and B, even possibly get the correct answer. So for this first one, I'm going to show you how to do this first one using two methods, using long division and that box method. So with long division, I notice that I have x squared plus 8 that I'm dividing by, and so I'm missing just a plain old x. So I'm going to put plus 0x in here, and then plus 8. And then we have x to the fourth, x cubed, x squared, x to the first, and then no x. So I have every term being represented there, so I'm just going to write those in here. So it'll be x to the fourth minus 4x cubed plus 12x squared minus 3x plus 6. Alright, so to start this, we're going to try to figure out what would we multiply x squared by to get x to the fourth. Well, x squared times x squared would be x to the fourth. So I'm going to put x squared, and I'm going to put it above the like term so I know when to end. So we're going to put the x squared above the 12x squared. So I'm going to multiply every term there by x squared, so we would get x to the fourth plus 0x cubed plus 8x squared. Now remember, the next step is we're going to subtract each of those. So x to the fourth minus x to the fourth, that's 0, which was the point. Negative 4x cubed minus nothing would still be negative 4x cubed. And then 12 minus 8 would be 4, so we'd have plus 4x squared. And then we bring down the minus 3x. Okay, so now I'm going to ask myself, well, what would we multiply x squared by to get negative 4x cubed? Well, that's going to be negative 4x, because negative 4x times x squared would be negative 4x cubed. And then this would give you 0x squared, and negative 4x times 8 would be negative 32x. But remember, the next step is we're going to subtract each of these. So I'm going to distribute a negative. So this will become positive, this will become positive, that will become positive. And so now when we combine those like terms, negative 4x cubed plus 4x cubed would be 0. So 4x squared plus nothing would be 4x squared. Negative 3x plus 32 would be 29x. And then we bring down the 6. So now I want to ask myself, okay, well, what would I multiply 4x squared by, or what would I multiply x squared by to get 4x squared? Well, that would just be 4. So distribute the 4 through, and we get 4x squared plus 0x plus 32. By the way, this would have been a plus 6, positive 6 there. All right, so next I'm going to distribute a negative through. And now when we combine these, we would have the x squareds would be 0, 29x minus 0x would be just 29x, and 6 minus 32 would be negative 26. And that would be our remainder. Again, we identified that as a remainder because we ran out of numbers. And there's nothing I can multiply x squared by to get 29x. So what we're going to do for our remainder here is we would write it like this. We'd have plus 29x minus 26. So we're going to write our remainder as a fraction over what we divided by originally. And we can skip that 0x, so just be x squared plus 8. So this would be your answer. Now I'm going to show you another way to do this, and this would be using that box method. This would be that other method that I showed you. So using the box method, just to give myself some space now, if you haven't already done so and writing this down, pause the video, make sure you have all this down because I'm going to erase some of this here, just to give myself some more space. Okay, so using this box method, we're going to put, it's the same idea, we're going to put the x squared, 0x, and 8 on the left side. And I'm going to just to make it a little bit easier, I'm going to put the x to the fourth minus 4x squared, or cubed rather, plus 12x squared minus 3x plus 6, and put that down here just so I have that to look at. All right, so I'm trying to figure out what would I, well, first off, we put the x to the fourth. We always put that first term Remember, whatever that first term is, we put in that first box. Okay, so now I'm going to look to see, well, what would we multiply x to the fourth, or x squared by to get x to the fourth? Well, that would be x squared. So now I'm going to multiply all of those terms by x squared. So x squared times x squared, again, is x to the fourth. This would be 0x cubed, and this would be 8x squared. Okay, next I'm going to try to figure out, well, what two numbers would I multiply together to get negative 4x cubed? Well, that would be, since that's a 0x cubed, this has got to be a negative 4x cubed. So negative 4x cubed plus 0x cubed, sure enough, is negative 4x cubed. Okay, so now up above there, I'm going to write down what would I multiply x squared by to get negative 4x cubed? Well, that would be negative 4x. So again, I'm going to multiply all three terms by negative 4x. And negative 4x times x squared, sure enough, is negative 4x cubed. This would be 0x squared. And negative 4x times 8 would be negative 32x. Okay, now here's where it gets a little different. So here we have these three terms. I want to figure out what, if I were to add those three terms together, what's missing to get a positive 12x squared? Well, 8x squared plus 0x squared is 8x squared still. So this would need to be 4x squared. So now if I add all three of those together, sure enough, we get 12x squared. So what would I multiply x squared by to get 4x squared? Well, that would be a positive 4. So now let's multiply everything by positive 4. So 4 times x squared, sure enough, that's 4x squared. And then we would get 0x here and 32 down here. Now, if this had been a situation where there was no remainder, down here we would have we would have a situation where there's nothing we would have to add together to get these last two terms. But if you notice, if we were to add negative 32x and 0x, we don't get negative 3x. And here we have 32, and that's not the same as 6. So I need to figure out what's missing here. So this is going to be my remainder. Whoops. What would I add to the negative 32 and 0x to get negative 3x? Well, that would be 29x. And what would I add to 32 to get 6? Well, that would have to be negative 26. So that's your remainder. So in a situation like this, we're using that box method and you're going to have a remainder. That's what you got to do. You got to figure out what pieces would we add together to what's left over to get the negative 3x and the 6. All right, so we would just write your answer then the same way, like what we have up here. So if you notice, x squared minus 4x plus 4 is the same thing that we have here. And what's left over is what we have in our numerator. We would divide by, again, what we're dividing by originally. So it would be x squared plus 8. So that's how you can do the same problem using the box method. So it's up to you to decide which one you want to use. Personally, when there's a remainder, I think I still like the long division a little bit better. All right, now with this one, we could use any of the methods that we learned about. By the way, in the previous one, we could not use synthetic division. Remember, synthetic division only works when our degree is 1. And here our degree is 2. So the previous one, we could not use synthetic division. But this one, we could use long division, we could use synthetic division, or we could use a box method. So I think I'm just going to show you with the synthetic division for this one. So remember, with synthetic division, we need to start with whatever the 0 is of what we're dividing by. And since we're dividing by x minus 3, if I set that equal to 0, we get x equals 3. So our 0 here is 3. Again, I know this is a little bit different than the way the book shows you. The book shows a little box around the 3. I like doing this way better. This is just the way that I was taught, and I think it makes it a little nicer as far as keeping things organized. Okay, so now we're going to put the coefficients. So I see that I have an x cubed, x squared, I have an x to the first and no x. So I'm just doing that because I recognize that I don't need to put any 0 terms in here. So we would have our coefficients. Remember, just the coefficients would be 1, negative 8, 9, and negative 5. So again, there should be no variables here. And then the process is we bring this down. So I bring that down, I get a 1. So now I multiply. 3 times 1 is 3. Now I add these two together. Negative 8 plus 3 would be negative 5. Multiply those together, we get negative 15. And when I add 9 plus negative 15, I get negative 6. 3 times negative 6 is negative 18. And when I add those together, I get negative 23. So I have a remainder here. So remember, whatever's next to the remainder box, that's going to stay a number. So this will be an x, this will be an x squared. So our answer would be x squared minus 5x minus 6. Then we'd say minus 23 over what we're dividing by x minus 3. So that would be your answer for that one. Now if we'd use the box method for this one, I'll just show you maybe that last method here. We would have x minus 3 over here on the side. And again, I might need a little bit extra space here. We're dividing by x cubed minus 8x squared plus 9x minus 5. So we'll have x cubed minus 8x squared, I think it was plus 9x minus 5. Let me just double check. Yeah. All right, so we always put that first term in that first box. So we'd have x cubed here. I'm just going to go through this one a little bit faster this time. So here we would have x squared, because x squared times x is x cubed. So then this would be minus 3x squared. And so then here we would need to have a negative 5x squared, which means I'd have to multiply by negative 5x here. So negative 5x times x is negative 5x squared. Negative 5x times negative 3 would be a positive 15x. And what would I add to 15x to get 9x? Well, that would be negative 6x. So I would need to have a negative 6 here. So negative 6 times x, sure enough, is negative 6x. Negative 6 times negative 3 is a positive 18. And I ran out, but I need to still figure out what would I multiply 8, because this does not work out, because 18 is not the same as negative 5. So what would I add to 18 to get negative 5? Well, that would have to be negative 23. So our remainder would be negative 23, which again, the same thing that we had here. So you could use either method for that last one. And again, you could have also even used long division, but I wasn't going to take the time to show you all 3 methods for this one. But hopefully you at least got the hang of getting these started and getting most of these problems correct. And good luck now as you work on your assignment.